Good evening, folks. This is Deb Delapiana, and this is your chain reaction report. Yeah, because I think it's going to be longer than 10 minutes. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about drags. No, not the GOP. They are a drag, I might admit, but we're going to talk about drag queens and drag as an art form. All the problems that we have here in the United States of America, all of the problems we face, every day on a worldwide basis. And they're serious. I mean, just take a look at Florida today. Just take a look at, Fort Myers. It's unrecognizable. Okay. We have global warming getting worse every year. These storms are getting worse every year. I have a guy that I work with who, very seriously said to me, they're saying this is the worst storm and worst hurricane in history. Well, they said that last year. I said, you're right, because that's how global warming works. If you don't do something about it, they're all going to get worse every year. Okay. Just take a look around. We have the threat of nuclear war from a fucking lunatic in Russia who's actually a dictator. And we have people here in America who really believe he's doing what he's doing in the Ukraine to rid the country of fascists. He's a fucking totalitarian dictator. He has poisoned people. He has abused his own countrymen. You do not go into a country and root out fascists, and while you're there, rape their women and cut the genitals off the men and find them in mass graves. You know what, folks? Don't even try to sell me that shit. We have all this shit going on, and what is it that irks the GOP? Drag story hour. That's a big problem here, because if you let your kids go to drag story hour, they're going to turn out to be queer. You're indoctrinating them. Right. You're not indoctrinating them by making them pray in school. No, because that's seen as something good for you. Right? I'm sorry, folks, but prayer has never solved the fucking problem. It may comfort you, and that's fine. But I've never seen prayer stop any calamity from happening. I've never seen a miracle, and I've never met God. And while I do not begrudge people of faith, because I believe people have a right to that, what they don't have a right to is shoving it down my throat. Now, let's talk about drag story hour, because that's really what I came here for. In order to understand what this is, you have to understand the history of drag. This is where the right wing falls off the wagon, because their idea of culture is a guy who dresses up in a shaman costume with a buffalo hat and white supremacist tattoos on his body, or parading around Charlotte with lit torches and Confederate flags. That's the GOP and the right wing's idea of culture. Okay. So let's talk about this. In reality, my friends, drag has been around for literally fucking centuries. It can be traced all the way back to the ancient Greek tragedies. Men always took on female roles. Shakespeare's operas included early examples of drag. Drag can also be dated to ancient Egypt, where powerful queens such as Cleopatra used to dress themselves up as men to assert more dominant strength and power to help them claim the throne. It has been around for centuries. It's been around longer than the GOP, okay? And every single era of drag has been crucial to the success and acceptance of drag today. Now, this photo here, by the way, is a male performer dressing up as a woman in Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. This is, the idea of gender bending is not anything new, I might add. Japanese, by the way, we always hear the phrase on Facebook that every time the government does something, it's kabuki theater. Kabuki theater actually is Japanese drag art, just in case you wanted to know. You know, this is Harry S. Franklin. Harry S. Franklin. He was a 1920s drag queen. Been around for a long time. There's some more performers there. This is Marsha P. Johnson. Had her own Netflix documentary. Honey, they've been around for a long time. They've been around for a long time. Here's another one that will give you the origins of drag. Couple of really good articles here. I suggest you read them so you can understand. Now, I realize that the GOP won't read any of this because they really don't want to know anything about this. They only want you to know that it's wrong, okay? That it's indoctrinating your child to expose them to this. So this is, right here, history of drag from antique Greece to RuPaul's Drag Race. I'm not going to read all this stuff to you. You can figure this out, okay? The little article here, little piece here about drag and the LGBTQ movement. So, honestly, when drag became associated with the LGBTQ movement, the performances became much more secluded because being gay used to be illegal, but it should be known here that the Stonewall riots of 1969 were organized by drag queens because they were sick and tired of being vilified. And in general, we folk in the gay community are really sick and tired of people passing judgment on us. Frankly, it's none of your fucking business what we do. Here's a little piece here from Vulture, which is pretty cool. It shows you the most powerful drag queens in America. Even goes through their history of performance, okay? It's important to understand, folks, that this is what we call performance art, okay? It has been around for quite some time. So let's talk about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I have very fond memories of this. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this, maybe 40. It was released in 1975. In 1975, I was 21 years old. And Tim Curry here was the star of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And we all used to go out every Friday night and see the Rocky Horror Picture Show at a place called the Orson Welles Cinema in Cambridge. It was like just on the outskirts of Harvard Square, just before you got into Central Square. And looky here, folks. It's even got its own Facebook page because this was a really rather famous cinema here in Boston. We used to go here all the time. Right here in this marquee, world premiere of Neil Young's Journey Through the Past. Rocky Horror was a repeat performance. It was shown constantly. And we used to all go there with our toast so we could throw it. We'd be there and we'd have a blast. It's a shame that things get vilified by people on the right who really don't get any of this fun kind of stuff. Their idea of fun is trafficking 17-year-old girls. You can ask Matt Gaetz that. But I guess that's normal because he's, at least he's not having a homosexual affair. He's just trafficking a minor. Here's another thing we used to go see at the Orson Welles Theater, and this was really in poor taste. Pink Flamingos. And it says right here, an exercise in poor taste. I mean, Divine was a drag queen to beat all drag queens. And she was a fun time. And I haven't seen this as much as I've seen Rocky Horror, but I've seen it quite a few times as well. But to be perfectly honest with you, these kind of outliers in the entertainment world aren't the only people who have indulged in this. Julie Andrews played a man playing a woman playing a man. You figure that one out. In a movie called Victor Victoria, which actually premiered on Broadway first. Here she is in the role that she played in the movie. The Disguise Surprise Comedy of the Year. This was came out in 1982. It was directed by Blake Edwards. And then we have Dustin Hoffman as Tootsie. We got a lot of this stuff going on, folks. This is nothing new under the sun. The only thing that's new about this is the right wing's obsession with drag queens. Now, in the Boston area, which, hey, a lot of people consider, Boston blue blood, conservative, whatever. We're not all that conservative. We were the first state to legalize same-sex marriage, even before the Supreme Court decision was handed down. And we also have a place called Jacques Cabaret, which has been here in Boston since the 1930s, and is still going strong. Destiny and Dee Dee DeRay, Sunday Fun Day, RuPaul, Secret Celebrity. I remember when I first moved out of my house, the first really serious apartment that I had, where I never had to go back home again. I did have to go back home once before this, but I moved to Melrose. And as it turns out, my landlords were gay. We went to Jacques a lot. Okay, we got friendly and we got to know each other. And they became great friends, actually. And we went to Jacques a lot. And there's still people that go to Jacques quite a bit. In fact, if you go right here and you learn about the Bay Village, which is, a historic Boston neighborhood, takes you all through, this will take you all through everything that's historic about it. The Lady of Victory's Church, it's a beautiful site. And it became a neighborhood, right? These are Bay Village homes on Fayette Street. These were built in the 1820s and 30s. This house dates back to 1830 and is right on Bay Street. Shows you, all the little nuances of the architecture. Some of the sculpture that you can see. Some of the skyline, some more houses. This used to be the Chemical 2 fire station, which is now a condo. It had the Coconut Grove nightclub, which actually burned down and killed a lot of people. It was 1942, I believe. And the Bay Village today, when you get to this part, there's Jacques right there. See? Still going strong, folks. No shortage of attendees at Jacques. Another one of my favorite places, and this was when I first came out, but also where I vacationed every year for 7 years. And my kids were with us, my partner and I, every year for 7 years, Provincetown. And we used to hang out when I was young at the Crown and Anchor, which boasted some great drag queens. They still do. They also have Lesbo Bingo here. comedians, drag queens, the Dyke Drag Brunch. You know, I still go to Provincetown, but I confess that since it's become a tourist trap for straight people as well, it doesn't have quite the charm it used to. But we used to go to breakfast every day at a place called the Post Office Cafe, which was right on the corner, right where the pier is, where the boat comes in. It was right on the corner. And our favorite waiter was a guy named Dixie. And his name was Dixie because he performed at the Crown and Anchor as a drag queen. You know, if you have a problem with all of this and you're straight, my suggestion is just stay the fuck out of Provincetown. I don't know. I mean, we don't feel as though we should have to be oppressed just because you're not comfortable with it. We're not entirely comfortable with heterosexual life, quite frankly, but we don't try to oppress you. We could care less what you do. What I'm trying to figure out is, what business is it of yours? What we do. This here is the Wash Ashore Festival, October 7th to 9th, coming up this month. This is a three-day town-wide gender-bending queer music festival. A splendid time is guaranteed for all. Some drag queens, some not. You know, another place that's one of my favorite places to go is New Orleans. They have a great drag club here. You can go see people dress up like Michael Jackson, Joan Rivers, Dolly Parton, whatever you want. The 5 queens and 1 king. The 5 queens and the 1 king being Michael Jackson. It's called Diva Royale. And now let's talk about Drag Queen Story Hour. This is what has set off the neo-Nazis that have seemed to find a way into our town. I just want you to know, you're not welcome here. We don't want you in the Boston area. You know, if you think there's a problem with kids learning that there are all different kinds of people in the world, and by the way, this isn't about indoctrinating kids. This is about kids learning that not everyone is the same. And that's not a bad thing. And it's not a bad thing if they're not like every other kid. That's what this is all about, all of it. And it's being misconstrued as something entirely off the chain. And, you know, I guess people want us to believe that neo-Nazis invading our city, talking about hatred, and dumping on people that aren't just exactly like them and don't share their thought process. I guess we really want to believe that that's normal, but I don't consider oppression normal, and I don't consider neo-Nazis normal, and I don't consider them part of our landscape here in Boston. You know, I live in Massachusetts because it's a safe place to live if you're not like everyone else. My kids aren't like everyone else, neither one of them. But my kids also don't see color. They don't see different cultures. They just see people. They don't particularly care what those people are. They don't care if they're Asian. They don't care if they're Black. They don't care if they're Hispanic. They don't care if they're gay. They don't care if they're straight. They don't care if they're bi. They don't care if they're drag queens. I brought them up that way. I brought my kids up to understand that toxic masculinity doesn't have to happen. And I brought my kids up to understand that not everyone's going to be just like them, and everyone should be accepted for exactly who they are. And that's why they think the way they do. And you know what? If you consider me a child abuser because I've done that, I'm really sorry, but you know what? I beg to differ with you. I don't consider myself a child abuser because I've taught my kids that there are differences in the world and that those differences should be embraced, not vilified. You know, we didn't have drag queen story hour when my kids were little. And it's too bad because I would have brought my kids to that without a doubt. But I can tell you that I did take my kids to P-Town. My daughter, who is now 26, I'm just going to show you this picture. This is one of the friends that they met in Provincetown, the drag queen. Okay. There was another one. I don't have the picture in photograph form. I only have it on a 35mm slide because back in these times here, these are probably the 80s. Back in those times, you know, digital photography was just a dream at that point. We still use 35mm slides. One of the other drag queens that my oldest daughter met was someone who performed as Cher at the Crown and Anchor. And she used to come on down. He used to come on down. He's a drag queen. And used to give my daughter, she was 4 years old at the time, a ride around town on the motorized scooter. They got to be great friends. And, you know, it's an odd thing, but my daughter never said, "Ma, is that a guy?" Never said a word. Just asked when she was going to see Cher again. And sure than shit, the next day on the street, she'd see Cher. And they'd be like buddies. You know what? Here's my point. All of the problems we have in America, and we have the GOP focusing on drag queens and drag story hour. What does that tell you? It tells you a lot of things. Mostly that the GOP's got nothing. They have no policies except oppression and obstruction. Anything that begins with an O, obnoxious, whatever. The point is that they don't legislate. They oppress. They don't pass laws. They just find ways to vilify people. They create hatred. They talk about violence all the time. They sit around and literally make up shit about transgender care. In Texas, we had a governor who, without even passing a law, dictated that his Department of Children and Families, I don't know what it's called in Texas, that's what it's called in Massachusetts, needed to investigate parents who were supporting their child's transgender care as child abusers. You know what? Forcing your child to be someone they are not is child abuse. Supporting your child in whatever they may be going through is never child abuse. The fact of the matter is, I have a transgender child. She's lovely. And she struggled all her life not being comfortable in her own skin. And at the age of 16, finally told me the truth and was definitely worried about my reaction to it. My comment to her was, "Your parents are lesbians. You have nothing to worry about where I'm concerned. I will support you in any way possible." My child then began treatment at 17, has been on the medication since 17. She is now 21, has not rushed into surgery, is not quite sure how she wants to handle it yet or which way she wants to go. But in the meantime, the shit that was going on with Boston Children's Hospital, where they do gender affirming surgery, the lies that were told there resulted in bomb threats, parents whose children are seriously ill because That is the majority of Boston Children's Hospital's business, is with children who are ill, spreading lies that they were doing hysterectomies on children as part of transgender care. They do hysterectomies on children there as a last resort for cancer, certain forms of cancer. But there is no surgery done at Boston Children's Hospital until someone is 18 years old, an adult, and not until they've gone through counseling and have a letter. All of this shit is built on fabrication and lies. And that's what the GOP does better than anything, is take people who are different than what their mold is and make them outliers and outcasts. And you know something? That to me is child abuse. To take a child and vilify them for who they really are, that's what the definition of child abuse should be. It is not any business of any government how families raise their children, unless there is some kind of overt abuse going on. And I would suggest to you that with some of the history in this country of children who were really undergoing serious abuse by parents and were never investigated, that might be where they want to spend their time. But as far as me taking my kid to drag queen story hour, I hate to say this, folks, that's none of your fucking business. It's not the business of the fucking neo-Nazis, and it certainly isn't the business of the federal government. Do your fucking job and mind your own business, and it'll be a better world. I'll talk to you all later. Oh, by the way, get a little culture too. I mean, beyond the whole, shaman thing, because he wasn't really a shaman either. That was an insult. I'll talk to you later.